Can you hear us?
How's this?
Hello?
I can hear you
How's that? Can you hear me?
better.
Hello,
Better.
Ed.
Okay.
Are you there?
Hey, yes.
I'll use my outside voice.
That's better, yeah.
Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, Ed. Welcome, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Town of East Hampton Planning Board for February 7th, 2024. We have a pretty full agenda. We're going to do the site plan subdivision and reviews first, and then we'll cover the senior center discussion. So I want to give the folks who are, here for other matters the ability to get out earlier rather than have to sit through your applause can be louder, sit through us talking amongst ourselves. So we'll start with ocean surf retaining walls. That is going to be taken by, I apologize, I should have mentioned that Jen and Ed are there on the screen. Sharon is not with us this evening. And just to show them how much we love our new members, every matter tonight is going to be covered by Bruce and Jen. So the first one we have is ocean surf. Tina, you're going to do that for the planning department. Is the applicant, apologize, is that you, Ms. Wilshire? Thank you. Okay, and then that's going to be Jen covering that one. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Good evening, everybody. This is the site plan evaluation for ocean surf retaining walls and vents. I have on the screen the location of the property. It's located on Montauk in South Emerson Avenue, right on the Atlantic Ocean. I'll bring up the survey so everybody can see more specifically the proposed work.
Hey, Tina, I'm sorry to interrupt. Having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, is that better? I'm going to try to speak
So much better. Yes.
directly into the mic. Sorry if it's too loud for others. Okay, so the scope proposed, this is a site plan application. It's to replace in kind retaining walls and top with wood fencing and replace a wooden fence in the front parking lot of the subject property. The retaining walls would be 4 feet tall and constructed from pavers, topped with 2 feet of mahogany fencing for a total of 6 feet. The fence to be replaced is 6 feet in height and will be replaced with mahogany. The subject property is currently developed with a 2-story motel, improved with also buildings and a pool, located in the resort district in Montauk. The applicant was applying for a building permit for these features and then was advised by the building department that they didn't have records of the existence of these structures, even though the applicant has explained that they've existed for some time. With respect to SECRA, the project is a type 2 action and the categories listed in the memo doesn't require further review. With respect to the scope of the work, the proposed fences and walls measure 6 feet in height and are located in the front yard. This would require ARB approval due to the height and location of the proposed improvements. There was an error in the memo. The memo referenced an NRSP being required for this. That's associated with a different application for this site that's currently ongoing. These structures, as you can see here, are set back from the 100-foot buffer between the dune crest and the setback, so these structures do not require that. The planning department recommends this as a minor site plan. It meets all the criteria listed in the section of the code reference 255-645. So in conclusion, the applicant is proposing to replace in kind retaining walls and fencing. The planning board recommends this is a minor site plan and that the application is complete and ready for approval if the planning board wishes to grant it.
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks. Just show the pictures of the fences to be replaced here. And that concludes my remarks.
Thanks very much. Ms. Wiltshire.
Just very quickly, we already have ARB for this. We went there before we knew we needed planning board. And I'll just show you briefly what this will look like. You can see that from there. These are pavers behind us.
Okay. Did you put those in the record yet, or
Did not, would you like us to?
you can do it tomorrow through the usual?
You're going to close the record tonight?
Well, yeah, I guess. All right, well, let's see how it goes. Okay. Yeah, you can, if we keep it open, you can, otherwise, I guess it's for your own benefit.
I'd rather not keep it open.
Okay, I'm sure you don't. Okay. Thanks very much. Jen?
So I think, as Tina mentioned, this is a really minor site plan change. I don't have any objections to it. I've been to the subject property and I've taken a look, and it sounds like the proposed changes are an improvement to what's currently there. So I'm good with all of it. I couldn't see the pictures Lori just held up, but I'm sure I'm sure it looks great.
Okay. All right. Does anybody on the board have anything they wish to add?
Just have one comment. I was there this afternoon, and this eastern wall is already done. There's a new tiles or something over the,
We did that, they did that after they got the ARB approval before they were told they needed to go to planning board.
Okay.
But I'll just show you what was happening over there.
it looks great.
Yeah, no, it looks.
Yeah.
It was going to be the mahogany.
There you go.
on top of it. But what was going on there is an actual collapse of the neighbor's property onto our property. So our wall got knocked over, and their detritus was falling onto our property.
I don't know if they're picking you up on the,
Okay, well, this is for your
okay,
benefit.
that's fair enough.
And so that's why that was done at the time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? Ed, you have anything?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. All right, then the first question is, does the board agree this is a type 2 action?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Ed, Jen? Both?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the board agree it's a minor site plan?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have to do anything else with this?
Nope.
There you are. You can keep your pictures. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right, that's number one. All right, the next matter up is the Pinkerton bathroom. That, Tina, you're going to do the planning department
Yes,
on
I'm
that?
covering it.
And where's the applicant? Am I, there, Mr. Halsey, this is yours? Thanks very much. Okay, Sharon is not with us tonight, and Bruce, as if he doesn't have enough on his plate, has graciously stepped in to pinch it. So go right ahead, Tina.
Thank you, Sam. This is the application for the Pinkerton bathroom. It's located at 92 Springs Close Highway in East Hampton, the hamlet of East Hampton. The application is submitted to facilitate the installation of a new bathroom at the subject site. The planning board recently issued approval for the construction of a barn in the rear of this property, circling right here. And at this time is requesting to put a bathroom, a small bathroom for employee use in the corner of the facility. The property is located in a residential zoning district and the South Fork Special Groundwater Protection Zone 4, and an innovative on-site wastewater treatment system is being proposed. So you can see this is a location, and here's the footprint of the proposed sanitary system. The allowable flow per the Suffolk County density restrictions for the site would be approximately 840 gallons per day, and the proposed flow is calculated as 49 gallons per day. This is way below what Suffolk County Department of Health Services would require. There are also private wells in the vicinity of the proposed system, and this would also be something that the Suffolk County Department of Health Services would review during their technical review. There does need to be a separation between the septic facility and those private wells. So obviously, Suffolk County Department of Health approval is going to be required as a condition of the planning board approval. We'll just note that in November, we received this application, or maybe it was October, and then we had sent the applicant some comments just regarding some discrepancies in the application. They resolved those to our satisfaction. So those are no longer issues. There's no new coverage or any other planning issues associated with the installation of the bathroom. The one thing we did want to discuss with the board is that during the site inspection for the CO for the barn, we did notice some architectural changes that had occurred. So, here's the approved plan from the recent planning board approval to construct the barn. And here are the, building elevations that were submitted in support of the barn. You can see it's very kind of agricultural in nature. And recent site visits show a structure that's, I would say, more residential in character has been constructed. So we just did want to hear from the applicant if these architectural changes are coupled with any potential changes in use. The architecture change plus the bathroom, we feel like we wanted to ask the question, is the use of the site consistent with what was originally anticipated? The barn has kind of slider type doors as opposed to barn doors that would open and kind of give you a more animal friendly entrance. But with that, that really concludes the comments. The installation of the sanitary system bathroom, we didn't find any issue with. We just want to resolve whether or not the architectural changes, which are being reviewed by ARB for their character and, aesthetic qualities, represent any other changes on the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Halsey.
Good evening. Joel Halsey on behalf of Lighthouse Line Planning, representing Harry Pinkerton, who is in the audience tonight. And he would be more than happy to discuss the aesthetics of the barn with you. I can assure you that the barn will be used for agricultural purposes only. This is a large piece of property. I don't know if you've ever been to the property. It is very long. It's not a large property per se, but it is a very long property. There is no bathroom currently on site. It is used for commercial agricultural purposes. There are employees that do need to use the bathroom. So it would be a very environmentally benefit to this property to have a bathroom on site for those employees. And I don't know if you have been to the site or who did the site visit from the board, but as you can see, the site has been greatly improved in aesthetic appearance compared to how it used to look. But I would like to introduce you to Mr. Pinkerton, and he can definitely address to the board his use of those buildings.
Hey, how are you?
Good evening. Your name, please spell it,
Harry Pinkerton, HarryPinkerton.
and your address.
92 Spring Close Highway.
Thanks very much. Welcome.
Thank you. So
I thought you had a statement.
Tell us about the barn.
I built a barn in the back of my farm. I completely restored this property. It does look a little nicer than I thought, but I basically got all those windows and doors for free from my contractors, so I put them in. In no way is it going to be a house or anything. It's totally storage. All the stuff and my equipment fit in there. Plus, we cure vegetables back there. All the employees work through the back barn where we harvest and bring stuff back before we bring it to the front of the store. Because if you've been to the property, there's no storage. There's nothing we can't store anything for the store. I have merchandise. I have, all the vegetables and everything. It's a 12 by 8 foot store. So you constantly have to turn over products. So we built a barn, and nothing's inside. All my equipment fits inside because I do everything by hand. So the hand tiller, the mower, everything's push. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
I have a question. Yeah, I was at the property. I couldn't walk into the property because it was locked. There was gates. So I went around the adjacent properties, which were residential.
Yeah, Covey Court.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Covey Court.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought when I looked at the barn and the way it's built, the look of it, I had the thought that perhaps you did it that way in order for aesthetic purposes to make it easier to look at for the neighbors who look upon that area. Was that a consideration, or?
The whole property was a dump when I bought it. There was trailers, boats, it was a junkyard, and I completely restored the whole property. So yeah, it does resemble a house, and the property resembles a homestead, but I live in Montauk and I like to live there. So like, yeah, the big barn's in the back, and then there's like a little barn in front, and then there's like the chickens and the peacocks, and then there's like an orchard, and everything resembles sort of like a homestead, but it's not. And the neighbors love this structure. It's beautiful.
All right, we'll discuss the application, and Bruce Cisco will lead us in that.
Yes, thank you, Tina, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I guess just looking over the application this afternoon, I think the owner has addressed sort of our question about the aesthetic difference between what was proposed, which looks like a barn, compared to what has been built, which looks like a cottage. So the question for me is, are you planning on a change of use? It doesn't sound like you are. I think there was also a question about the second structure, which is the animal stall. I think the aesthetic there is also a little different than what was originally proposed to the board. But other than that, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, do you think we need to do anything or ask the applicant to do anything to ensure in perpetuity that it's not going to be used for residential purposes?
I think that probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, it does.
Covenant of some
Yeah,
sort?
it's.
The applicant being-
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think putting a covenant on this would be much of an issue to begin with, because obviously it can't be residential now or in the future. So putting a covenant on it.
One more box to check.
One more box to check, and it's not going to make it, I guess it will make it more restrictive, but it really doesn't restrict it any more than it is.
That's fine. It's, the idea is that if the property is sold somewhere down the road and somebody else decides that, well, there's a place I could live.
At least they'll see that in
Right.
the property search, and they'll understand.
Okay, so how does anybody else feel about that?
I have no objection to the bathroom, and, we're talking about the
Talking
covenant.
about a covenant to say you can't live there. And it's a non-residential structure.
Why not? See, I was going to say it looks more like a pottery barn than a barn.
Well, then it would become a commercial property for
boy.
pottery barns. All right, let me ask our video members. Jen, Ed, how do you guys feel about this?
I just have one question, and it may have been covered in Tina. I'm sorry if you said it, but I didn't. What is it zoned? Is it agricultural? Are there restrictions already on the piece of property so that it cannot be residential, or is it in a residential zone?
That's correct. It is in a residential zone, but it's an agricultural overlay that I feel very weird talking to a TV.
I know, right? You're talking.
Sorry, I understand. It's residentially zoned with an agricultural reserve over it, and you are not allowed to have residential use on the property, only agricultural use.
So I kind of feel like that already, dictates that it will never turn into anything residential. Do we need to require another covenant on the land in addition?
I think, and to the point of the board, I think if you put just a single covenant on it, if the property was to switch hands, that covenant would be kind of front and center during a property search, and would be anybody buying, that would be one of the things that
Would definitely, right, they would definitely know. Okay.
Mr. Halsey just hit my thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. Ed, do you have anything on this?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I have been familiar with this property over the years, and it really does look a lot better now. So, thank you to the applicant for that. And yeah, I think even though it is belt and suspenders a little bit, I think the covenant would really be a good idea to put it, as you say, Joel, front and center, that this can't be a residence. As it happens, there is a tiny house on a nearby property on Spring Close. So I think it's important to kind of keep it front and center to any new owner that this is not going to be a house for anybody down the line. So I would support that idea.
Great. Okay, I'll do the questions. If anyone, Lou, did you have anything? Okay, very good. All right, should the applicant clarify if the changed architectural styles of the building signal a change of the use proposed for the site? And I guess he's answered that for us? Yes. Okay. Is the application complete and ready for a public hearing?
Yes.
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 Ed?
Yes.
And Jen?
Yes.
Very well. Okay. Then, and I'm just going to add, and do we all agree about adding a covenant to the property?
Yes.
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 So, Mr. Halsey, why don't you work with the planning department on that language, and with town attorney, and next time we can come back, and we'll schedule the public hearing. There'll be a resolution down the road on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Next, we have 55 Wayne Scott Hollow modification. And again, that's going to be Tina doing that.
Yes.
And is the applicant, sir?
Louis, bless you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, you see how it goes. First, Tina speaks on behalf of the planning department, then you'll have an opportunity to speak, and then the discussion will be again led by Bruce. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. This is the application for a 55 Wainscott Hollow Road final subdivision modification. Pursuant to a recommendation from the Planning Department, this modification application has been made seeking clarification regarding specific conditions of the 55 Wainscott Hollow subdivision, which was approved in January of 2017. Subsequent to that, covenants and restrictions reflecting the planning board conditions were mapped on the properties you see here on the GIS area.
I think you need to share your screen.
Oh, I didn't share it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you see on your screen this lovely map of
Looks like
55
Wainscott.
Wainscott Hollow Road. So in the memo, I quoted the specific text from the planning board subdivision that is at issue, and it's regarding accessory structures and primary structures and the building envelopes. So rather than read that to you, I'm just going to bring up the memo where it's reproduced and people can look at it while I speak. So requirement 18 required that no building or structures beside fences can be constructed within 10 feet of the agricultural easement boundary, while requirement 19 indicated that all buildings and structures, except for driveways and utilities, but everything else needed to be confined to the building envelope shown on the map. Now, these are in conflict, and I'm going to show you the subdivision map here. So there is the property that submitted this is Lot 4, but these apply to all the properties in the subdivision, right? But I'll use Lot 4 as an example. There is agricultural reserve area on two sides of this property, and the requirement 18 that we just read would allow the fence to be installed on the property line. Whereas requirement 19 would require that the fence, which is considered a structure in the town code, be confined to the principal building envelope at the 20-foot setback line from the property line. So originally in interpreting this, we took a very conservative approach and said everything should apply all the accessory structures to the principal building envelope. But recognizing that there is a conflict and there was concern by the applicant, we recommended that they come to the planning board seeking a clarification as to what the planning board's intent was with these conditions. To provide a little background, this property and several others in the subdivision have been in active review for the Architectural Review Board. This one in particular has been before them several times, but others in this subdivision are either, being actively constructed or a new application just came in, I think, for the last lot. So this clarification could have ramifications beside the one lot that submitted this application today. Regarding change in circumstance, it is established planning board policy that in order to review a prior subdivision approval, the change of circumstance be determined, and then that warrants looking at the approval again. And then once that's established, the planning board can review based on the subdivision guidelines. We did note that at the time of this decision by the planning board, this subdivision decision, This was about 1 year prior to a code change made by the town board regarding gates and pillars and posts associated with fences. Prior to that, those hadn't been considered structures in the town code, and then once that was passed, they were clearly considered structures in the town code. So that shows that there was some general ambiguity regarding what constituted a structure associated with a fence. In addition, I proffer that even without a change of circumstance in this case, the applicant's really seeking a clarification more than a modification, because we have shown that there are conflicting requirements in the subdivision decision. So with that said, the applicant had proposed some language that specifically would name the structures that are excluded from the setback requirements, and I will just show that rather than reading it verbatim. So requirement 18 would be modified to add specific fences plus gates, driveway gates, call boxes, and requirement 19 would have that same language, clearly exempting these structures from both the principal building envelope and the agricultural easement boundary envelope. And then just in conclusion, again, to make sure it's clear that this decision will not just apply to this one lot. It's not really a mechanism for the planning board to decide for one lot in the subdivision. The conditions applied to all the lots. So if you modify or clarify the decision, it would apply to all the lots. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Applicant, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Louis D'Alessia. I'm with JC Construction Management, 81 Newtown Lane, East Hampton.
Could you just spell your last name, please?
Deles as in Sam, IA as in Apple.
Very good. Thank you very much. Please go right ahead.
So I really appreciated Tina and Dan's time, and the memo was super clear. The last couple of days, we wondered if we made a misstep in filling out our modification. Initially, we were advised to submit a modification for a clarification regarding the ambiguity with fences and gates and structures on the subdivision. And in doing so, that modification application says that, sorry.
It's springtime almost.
It says proposed changes, and we were kind of just going through the motions and filling in the blanks. So we proposed changes to the subdivision approval, essentially. I don't know that that's our intention. We're here seeking the board's clarification, and whatever determination you make is the means to address this. But perhaps it doesn't need to be a modification to the subdivision approval language. Perhaps it could just be some sort of a decision or a determination that, as Tina said, the code regarding fences and gates had changed over time, and that for the purpose of this subdivision, the language should be construed a certain way. But I'll leave that in your hands. Otherwise, everything about this subdivision, setbacks and language on the 10 feet, except for fences and gates, that's standard scenic easements, conservation easements. So we were just hoping for what we feel is a reasonable interpretation that fences and gates are permissible on the property line, and the intent wasn't to create 40-foot buffers between neighboring properties at which you could either put your fence or put your principal structure. Furthermore, there was ambiguity with the approved map, specifically says principal building setback, and the subdivision approval states a building envelope. So that was a little unclear as well. So yeah, we're seeking the clarification regarding the location of fences, and that gates are the corresponding structures to fences, and that a gate key box, which is referenced in 255-2288, would kind of hold hands that a gate key box can be read the same as a gate and a fence for location.
Is that what you're calling a call box?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
So it'd be like required for a Knox box for the fire department to be able to enter.
Right. Okay. Anything else for now?
I believe that's it. Am I okay to stand, or do you want me
Oh, no, you're welcome to have a seat. We'll talk amongst ourselves, and if there's a question, we'll give you one of these. Thanks. Okay, Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Tina. Like Tina said, I think there's been a history with this project. Obviously, there was a miscommunication or misunderstanding from the initial CNRs for the subdivision. I think we need to think about not this property singularly, but the subdivision as a whole, because they will all follow each property or project. Looking through the paperwork, I think during the course of all this, the town has sort of defined what fence, gates, call boxes are. So following through and looking at the proposed site plan for this property, it looks like, you know, they want to propose the fences, 4-foot fence along both ag reserve property lines, and then the separating line running north-south between lot number 4, and I believe it's not lot number 5 to the east.
3, yeah.
Lot number 3, okay. And then proposing the other structures, which would be the driveway gate, call box, and there was one more thing. No, driveway gate and the call box.
Accepting driveways, utility lines, fences, gates, driveway gates, and call boxes for driveway gates.
Correct. So proposed on their site plan, they have, they're showing the driveway gate, which is about 21 feet back from the north property line, 15 feet 3 in from the east line, so that would pretty much fall into this parameter. The call box sits outside of that. That also is 15 feet 3 from the east line, and then 10 feet from the north line or the edge of the road. So with all these sort of changes in mind, I think that this all makes sense to me.
Does it make sense to the rest of the board?
Yeah, I just have a question about whether it should be, as the applicant noted or asked, whether it's a modification or whether it's a clarification. Do we have a choice? Is that, and I would ask Nancy that question.
Does clarification exist?
Yeah, no, I discussed this with others in the attorney's office, and it seems like the only way to do this is through a modification, which again would affect all the lots.
Yeah, I agree. I would prefer it to be a modification. I think that's the cleaner.
Yeah.
I think it answers all the questions for this subdivision being developed moving forward.
Yeah.
The only issue I have, and I agree, because there's nothing in the code that is called a clarification, is
Right.
there? So, but there is certainly modification. So my only issue is, should the other property owners who are in that subdivision somehow, how are they to be notified that this modification has been made? And is there some mechanism for them maybe to say, we don't want that? Those are the issues that jump to my mind. You know, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at 18 and 19, the old 18 and 19, and I'm not going to say, but but it strikes me that we probably have a Scrivener's error here, and that 19 should have just had the words "except fences" following all buildings and structures, the same way in 18 it says no buildings or structures, and it probably should, that phrase "except fences" should have been in 19, and then it would have made, there wouldn't have been any need for this. But thank you for pointing out this problem. Unfortunately, we have to deal with it.
I've had a modification with the ARB for over 2 years, and I've just been like a ping pong ball going back and forth between the building department, the planning department, and the ARB on various matters. And this has been like the last 3 to 6 months, this one in particular.
Maybe we can stop the bouncing. Let me, go ahead, I'm sorry. Maybe you should stand here.
So the concern, should I have any concern regarding modifying the subdivision approval language that?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
property owners, perhaps with lenders, and all I'm looking to do is go forward with an ARB presentation.
Yeah, no, I get it. This is one of those instances where, you start to pull the string a little bit and the sweater starts to fall apart.
Yeah, and I wish it would have just stopped with the ARB attorney or a building inspector, perhaps, that specifically fences don't have dimensional setbacks in the code. So it just seems like it kind of snowballed.
Yeah, no, I know. Let me just see, let's hear from Ed and from Jen. Guys?
Hi. I think that because this makes, this proposed change or modification would make would make less of a burden or less restrictions on each of the property owners. I don't see that there would be any blowback from the other property owners. I do think we need to follow whatever rules are in place for notification in a case like this. But and I appreciate you're not wanting to, have this snowball into something which it probably didn't need to be. As Sam pointed out, it probably was just a typo. But now that you've pointed it out to us, we do have an obligation to.
I honestly didn't. It was pointed out to me, and we were just trying to move forward.
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Jen. I can't imagine why the other property owners would have any objection to this change. It really is to their benefit. I mean, they could still have the fence 10 feet away from the property line if they prefer it. But I think, clearly it's a better thing for everyone to have the fence on the property line adjacent to the ag reserve. It just makes a lot more sense. So I can't imagine that there would be any objections. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just come down to the fact we're now in a place where a modification needs to be made, and whatever process has to be put in place to do that has to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does everybody on the board agree that this is the sort of thing that is I call it a net positive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right,
Definitely.
so
Definitely.
all right, so perhaps what we should think about is granting the modification and instructing that somehow there be a public notification of this. I would think that the other folks in the subdivision should be given actual notice of this.
Yeah.
Is there a mechanism, Tina or Nancy, that you could think of that we can apply to give the neighbors, the other folks in the subdivision?
Well, there's nothing
Notice?
I know of, unlike a public hearing, for instance, there's nothing in the code requiring it. As we discussed this earlier, we thought after assuming that you do grant the modification, to either, you could put it like a notation on all the lots, the building cards of all the parcels, an amendment of the CNRs, so there would be notice.
That's actually, so there'd be an amendment of the CNRs so that anyone.
Could do both.
If there's a transfer, then this is like the last application, it'll get picked up at the time of transfer. But I'm just wondering, because you mentioned lenders and folks like that being concerned with actually knowing it. Well, anyone have any bright ideas? No?
I live nearby. I
Yeah, I
can
know.
walk over
You want to
there.
walk over and deputize you? And
So do we amend the CNRs?
we're being, I guess that's actually what is going on here.
Right? We would have
Well,
to
we're
do that.
amending the subdivision conditions are what we have the ability, well, the planning board has the ability to amend, but the applicant usually records the CNRs.
Right, yeah, they'd submit it, we'd approve it, and then they would be responsible for getting recorded.
Right.
All right, then I guess,
Was my language correct? Would you prefer key box instead of call
well,
box?
I mean, it's a little more expansive than just the word fences, which is what it, except fences, which is, again, and I'm purely surmising, that should have been there. I don't have any objection because it's totally consistent with the newer language in the code. So does anyone have any objection to the
Well,
language?
is it a call box To open the gate?
It would
It's
be-
not a
It
Knox
would be
box.
both. It would be the call box with the Knox box attached, which is pretty standard for our installations.
So that's a little bit bigger than just I mean, a typical call box is, you know, with the Knox box, it's going to be a little bit larger, no?
I don't think so. I think it's relatively discreet, like on the side of the call station, but
I'm not sure about that.
Well, how do you feel about that?
But I guess regardless, I was looking at 255-2288, and it referenced the 20-foot off the pavement for the driveway gate, and then specifically that a key box would be 10 feet off the pavement. But those went together the same way gates and fences are tied together in certain sections of code. So that's where we thought it was like a reasonable interpretation that if you have a driveway gate permissible, that call box should be permissible.
I would want it to conform to the town code. That's, if this, and is that what the words in the town code say?
I don't know that section off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I'll have to look. I do know that this language would stay, that where the setbacks of the zoning code are greater, those would apply, right? So we usually have that language, and we wouldn't be changing that. But to your point, I'd have to look at the language for call boxes and study that and make sure there was any, because I didn't do that.
Let's work, maybe we need to work with the applicant to get the language straight.
Sure.
So you work with the planning department and I guess council's office to make sure that the language is consistent with the code and prepare a CNR.
In that list?
I'm sorry?
Mailboxes be thrown into that
Well,
list?
when we make our weekly list of things we would like the town board to do, throw that on there. But I guess we'll have to put together a CNR on this. So you work with the planning department and the legal and law office to do that?
Sure. Just driveways, gates, and pillars. Was gate key boxes should be placed in a reasonable position to allow access from a vehicle once the vehicle is fully upon the driveway, but in no case closer than 10 feet to the edge of a public or private road surface.
Okay. So, all right, so you'll do that, and also and we'll make this part of whatever resolution we finally end up with, that you'll be obligated to file it so that everybody in the subdivision has notice, at least, of record notice of this.
So the understanding is that we can rewrite this approval and it will just be sent as a notice to the other property owners?
No, not necessarily. No, it could just be filed of record so that they have notice. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like to have an actual notice given, but it doesn't sound like there's any facility for us to do that. Okay. So the next best thing is what we call constructive notice, which is the notice being made public record like any other CNR.
And then for my business with the Architectural Review Board, does this conversation mean that the planning board can advise the Architectural Review Board of the comprehension, or do I have to wait a formal resolution?
Once we get the
You're going to need a
modified-
resolution from us. Yeah, that's for sure. So, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we can then advise the ARB that the planning board has clarified the decision, and that should.
And that way you could take it to them and they'll know the frame that we've set up.
Okay, and I apologize, I really appreciate it, but we don't have language that says you can't put fences on your property lines. It was just a conservative interpretation.
It is an interpretation based on the language that's here. And the ARB, from what I understand, was also taking that interpretation. So that is why, it's one thing for the planning board to interpret it and advise, but the ARB was, without this clarification, leaning towards making the fences go with the building envelope. So that's why we're here.
Okay?
Okay.
Maybe not okay, but, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've gotten really bad luck. I mean, there's other approvals, there's fences on the property lines, and it just everything, when we put it up there, it just got looked at under my magnifying glass, but I've said enough, so,
Yeah, it's a late night.
yes.
Okay. All right. So let me just, before we go to the questions, Ed or Jen, do you have anything else you want to add?
No,
Okay, thanks. All right, we're going to do the questions. Does the board agree that a clarification of the apparent conflict between requirement 18 and requirement 19 can be issued? And it's the word clarification. I'm a little,
A clarifying modification.
yeah, okay. I'm going to do an audible. Does the board agree that a modification of the subdivision language should be issued to clarify the apparent conflict between requirement 18 and requirement 19?
Yes.
yes.
Guys, got you, thank you. Does the board agree with the applicant's language, or is some other language warranted? And I
think we're good.
You said we have to work on the language.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, we're going to have to tweak it
issue.
just a bit. All right, but you'll work on that. So, okay, very well. Thank you very much. We appreciate your coming before us and clarifying things. Thank you. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to the Beckman commercial matter. And again, Tina, you've got that. Mr. Hammer and Ms. Burke, they're both yours. Okay, thanks very much. And Jen? you
I'm
ready?
here. Yep.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
Okay, thank you, Sam. This is the Beckman Commercial Building Site Plan Special Permit Modification. The board last discussed this in November 2023. A brief history: in July of 2023, the planning department was alerted to, by the applicant and their team, was alerted to significant changes that had been made to the subject site plan as compared to the planning board approved plan. At the meeting in November, the planning board discussed each of those and resolved that several of them were okay. So tonight, I thought we'd focus our discussion on the issues that remain outstanding based on the planning board last comments. The first issue that was noted as outstanding was proof that the building height was compliant with town code. The planning board had asked for updated elevations and building plans to show this. The applicant provided this, which shows that the building line, the tip of the roof, is in compliance with the height as measured to the elevation prior to building construction, which is the appropriate way to do it in town code. So that issue is now resolved. The second item was regarding the sidewalk on the subject property and whether or not ADA compliance was required with respect to the connection of the sidewalk at 94 South Euclid to the sidewalk on 92 South Euclid. And I'm just going to bring up the plans. The board likely remembers that the elevation of 94 South Euclid is about 2.5 to 3 feet higher than the neighboring property. I'll show a picture. It's currently blocked by a retaining wall and fence. And here they would build a staircase to connect these as shown on this plan. So the primary issue the board asked last time was, is ADA compliance to connect these two private sidewalks required? The applicant did some research and coordinated with the town attorney's office. The findings of that research was that there is not a requirement for ADA compliance for these sidewalks, which are on private property. So with that resolved, the board has asked the applicant, if ADA compliance is not required, please review the potential to install a sidewalk to connect the properties. The applicant has done that and submitted a plan that shows that a sidewalk could be installed that would connect both these sites. With respect to the plan as proposed, we note that there are features that may require site plan approval on the 92 South Euclid site. And we also have reservations regarding the, if, whether or not a staircase is in the interest of good planning at this location. We think it could be a trip fall hazard that, both property owners would be concerned about, as well as, needing to secure 92 South Euclid's approval for the sidewalk and also possibly a site plan modification for that site. We do think something like that would be necessary, and we wonder if that property owner would agree. The retaining wall, while also not typically a feature found in the middle of a sidewalk, is currently protecting the area from, pedestrian intrusions and potential, harm from the elevation change. So the planning board can now determine whether or not they think a sidewalk is necessary, but the planning department isn't necessarily saying that it is. But we're concerned that it's not a great idea after seeing the plan. The next issue that was discussed at the last meeting, I'll bring up a different photo, was the landscaping. There was some discussion, and the board was a little divided on this too, so interested to hear everybody's feeling on it now. We have discussed that perhaps more screening would be appropriate to screen from view the boulder structure and retaining wall features that were not components of the original site plan, and screen them from view to the intersection of 92 of South Essex, which is here to the north of the site, and South Euclid. Several board members last time did discuss concerns regarding site distance for this intersection. There's a turn here and there's a good amount of traffic. The applicant has submitted the landscape plan that was installed, which isn't what was approved by the board originally, but is installed here. And you can see there are these trees, which the applicant on the plan identified as Zelkova serrata, which is the same tree that's in front of the building currently, according to the plan. So with that, we just wanted to remind the board that with the site distance concerns, having a large tree that will look like this in several years, might not be sensitive to that concern. So we wanted the board to consider whether or not shrubs might be a more appropriate treatment, just to kind of soften the view, but not totally obscure site distance. And that's that issue. And then the last open issue, based on the board's discussion at the last meeting, was the issues associated with the alleyway. As discussed in November, the alleyway was paved and constructed in a manner that prevented access to a neighboring property to the south at 813 Montauk Highway. That property had historically gained access to the rear of their property from the alley, and with the applicant's changes, including a asphalt tip-up, which is shown here in dark black, and paving, they were no longer able to access their site. The applicant has submitted a plan that resolves the access issue from a technical perspective, really two ways. One, the plan proposes drainage structures in the alley. One of the concerns that led to the tip-up installation was the need to prevent stormwater from entering the 813 Montauk Highway property. The topographic contours aren't shown here, but the water is flowing from north to south here. Like, there's a high point at the South Essex South Euclid intersection, and it is sloping down toward Montauk Highway. The concern was flooding could be a risk at this property if there was no drainage. So drainage has been proposed and sized in accordance with town standards to mitigate the potential for stormwater concerns, and the asphalt tip-up now is remaining in certain locations. You can see it remains in dark black, but has been removed from a large swath of the entrance to the property to allow access to be restored. And finally, there would also be some grading that would be required to reduce the elevation change between the alley and the property at 813 Montauk Highway. And these are proposed and would allow a low-hanging car to enter the site. At this time, it's appropriate for the planning board to consider whether or not they accept that the changes to the alley are appropriate. The town engineer has reviewed them. The planning department agrees that given the realities of what's occurred here, this is a practicable solution to providing access and to the property once again. It does so in a way that doesn't preclude or inhibit the use of the property and the business that currently accesses it. I will say, and this is important, and you can see it here, should the planning board agree that these changes are appropriate, minor grading work, or what the building department referred to as feathering, to get the grades to agree on the 813 and the alleyway would be necessary. So if the property owner at 813 didn't agree to allow work on their site, this proposal wouldn't be implemented, what I understand. And you can see there are some grade adjustments on these profiles that the engineer can describe this better than I can, so I'll spare you my details. In any event, the applicant made several unapproved changes to the site plan during construction. Many of those were discussed and resolved at the last meeting, and I just discussed the remaining issues open for the board to consider today: the sidewalk, the landscaping, and the improvements of the alleyway. And depending on the board's discussion, we'll see if another submission on this is required. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that comprehensive report on this multi-layered issue, multi-layered application. Mr. Hammer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hi, Bruce. Nice to see you in your new role. I wasn't going to say anything, which is usually a good strategy, but I felt like I had to say something here. I work really hard with Ian, who actually visited the site a few times, and unfortunately, he's either gone up or down. I'm not quite sure exactly how I'd characterize that, but I did want to get up and just kind of quickly summarize. I kind of have the dream team of people in the audience right now with me. I have Montauk's favorite vet, that's Molly, my vet, and the vet that Montauk needs to be in her office working. That's Mrs. Beckman, Kathleen Beckman, who's probably been in Montauk since before.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Rhett is here, Rhett Beckman. Drew Bennett is here. And Tara from my office. So I just thought I'd let you know, everybody who's here, we're happy to answer any questions.
Some other folks who are waving.
And our neighbor as well, who's the Martells and Tom. In any event, I did want to just briefly address a couple of those comments. One is with regard to the sidewalk. This is a sidewalk that I had pointed out doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't connect to the road. It doesn't give you a purchase or transit to anywhere. It leads to the back of the property. So I do tend to agree that a staircase would be so out of character in this area. And as a matter of fact, if you want to look for other examples, look across street, look down. Basically, this is for internal circulation on the site. It wasn't designed to provide connectivity. So I think that is probably the best solution, is to just say, hey, it looks nice. As a matter of fact, this site is built. That's another nice thing, is we're not dealing with an unknown quantity. I drive by this 3 or 4 times a day, and it's kind of become part of the landscape. And I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. The height of it is much lower than it could have been. It's just starting to blend into the landscape every time I drive by. The alleyway was the bigger issue. I do think that what was built there is consistent with the site plan. My recollection is that we are within inches of the required elevations or proposed elevations on the original site plan. However, there just wasn't enough detail that was included on that grading, drainage, et cetera, to project out exactly how it was going to work. I would want to tell you that Drew worked exceptionally hard on this. This seems like a very easy thing to address, but I do know the engineering review and that was put into this was an exceptional amount of recalculation, construction, revisitation, et cetera. And he evaluated the options. I would advise you to just read the letter rather than me recap it all. However, I do think that our proposed solution, which seems to have the endorsement of the town engineer as well, would accommodate and alleviate some of these concerns. However, as Tina points out, this requires the neighbor to agree that they would allow this work. We had volunteered to do it as part of the subdivision. Also, I did want to say Tina worked exceptionally hard. This has been a very difficult and long road. I just hope that we can get to the end. I wanted Tara to just come up. She's more familiar with the landscaping than I am. There were just a couple of minor questions that I think she might be able to address that I can't.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the board. Tara Burke from Lighthouse Land Planning. Tina, thank you for your memo, and thank you guys. I know everyone's been working hard on trying to resolve this. As far as the landscaping goes, just to clarify some of the items that were mentioned in the memo, yes, this does reflect, the landscaping plan reflects the existing conditions. Because it's different than what was the approved plan, we figured let's give you a plan that reflects everything that can be a part of the hopefully approved record. And as Tina had noted at the last submission, there was some split feelings on the board about whether or not to put additional screening on the corner. We do have the trees that match the street tree in front of the building, and I think that the photo of it was up before, and if you can see how with that existing street tree, it's actually called a green vase is the common name, and it grows up and gets bushy on the top, right? So the lower part doesn't impede view, which is why we chose these. Town code actually says on corner lots, you're not allowed to have a fence greater than 3.5 feet for 30 feet from that corner for the purpose of sight distance. So our only concern with putting a shrub in would be that sort of acts the same as a fence. It's the lower sight distance, and then the grade change here, you're going up the hill, so that exacerbates that condition as well, which is why we felt the trees softens the view, but still creates that visible pathway in the lower part when you're sitting in your car. And there is clover planted in the rocks as well, which is reflected on the site plan. About 50% of that came in, so we're going to reseed in the spring. And then as far as Tina just had a note about number 8 on the landscaping key didn't appear to be on the plan. And number 8 is the boxwood, which is in the front of the building. You can see it on the photos, but right where it says sidewalk, it's that right in front. And we'd be happy to add that number 8 notation for, as a condition of approval to clean that up. So, and I think that's it on the landscaping element.
Tina, did we talk about what happens if that tree, say, fails?
No, I didn't talk about that.
Let me ask Ms. Burke. Let's say a horrible thing happens to that tree. What's your plan at that point?
Well, then we would put a new one in.
But the same in play, same type of tree, the same, because it seems to me that so much of what is going on with this application is tree-centric, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the approved landscaping plan, so that becomes a requirement.
Okay.
So we just have to replant.
Type of tree, same height, same
Yep.
beauty. Terrific. Okay. All right, Jen?
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I could not be there in person for this presentation. Tina, thank you so much. Andy and Tara, thank you guys also so much for all of your hard work. I spent the better part of the afternoon watching the November planning board meeting when this was last up for discussion. And while I have not been here for the bulk of the project, I know I have some huge shoes to fill with Ian moving up to the to the town board. I consider it up. I'm not sure, Andy, that you do. However, so I appreciate all of the time and effort that has gone into this. And I think that we're really, really close to coming to some sort of conclusion with this project. I'm really happy to hear that the height issue was resolved. For me, I went out to the property yesterday morning, and I agree with the planning department's assessment that building a stairway between the sidewalk at this subject property and the next door neighbor is probably not a great fix. I think that the retaining wall and screening that's there now is enough of a deterrent so that people understand that sidewalk, is not connected to, it's not connected and it doesn't need to be connected to the neighbor's sidewalk. And there is definitely plenty of room for people to walk around and get from one to the other. I do think that most people will be arriving at this location by car and not, wandering in from town and looking for a sidewalk. As far as the landscaping goes, and with the rest of the board members, if you guys have anything to interject while I'm talking, please go ahead. Landscaping, Tara, I'm glad you mentioned that those trees were chosen for that kind of specific purpose, because I do think the sight distance is a concern at that corner, but I do see what you're saying, that the bottom part of the tree is actually, clear of foliage, and that perhaps a shrub, like an evergreen shrub or a boxwood, might actually hinder the sight view more than a tree might. So I definitely appreciate that, and I think that that's probably a good thing. I think the alleyway is really just the biggest hurdle for everyone to get through so that this can move on. I think that the plan, excuse me, that's been proposed with the drainage is the best. This is pretty close. I think that's the best we can hope for. And I appreciate that you guys are cognizant of the potential for, stormwater runoff onto the neighbor's property. And so, taking the cost of kind of refurbishing the alley once again is greatly appreciated. And I think that the only question then would be if the neighbor to the south is amenable to something like this, so that they can have access to their property once again. Anybody else on the planning board have any?
That's my line.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for picking up that ball. It is it's a big project, and it's important to a lot of people in town. And
yeah,
and Ian had been handling it very adeptly. So thank you for stepping up. I'll turn it over to the board. Does anyone have anything they wish to add?
I'll
Lou, you're chomping at it. Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I use Dr. Molly. My wife loves Dr. Molly. My dog loves Dr. Molly, but I can still be objective in making my decision. I think of all the site plan departures that happened that were taken by the applicant, I think all of them have been either corrected or improved upon the original requirements. I agreed even at the last meeting that that retaining wall is not a problem. We don't need to build a staircase. Actually, I walked that street and there's another location across the street where there's a similar retaining wall. It's a hodgepodge, so this isn't an aberrant situation for that street. Anyway, it comes down, as I said the last time. Oh, and one other thing, I just want to get this out because I think it's important. We received multiple emails from the community. And part of that is because Dr. Molly is very much loved and appreciated in the services that she has. But those messages were all of the same ilk. They said, planning board, please let Dr. Molly into her building. Please let Dr. Molly provide the services that we so desperately need. As though we were keeping Dr. Molly from doing that. It wasn't the planning board that was keeping Dr. Molly from doing that. It was a site plan that was not properly adhered to, and we're trying as hard as we can to resolve that. So I just want to get that on the record. So as I said the last time, the big issue is the access to the neighboring property. Certainly, anybody would be sympathetic to the neighbor if all of a sudden the access to his property has been blocked or made into a situation where he can't get his car in there. As I understand it, the site plan called for a 1.5-inch elevation between the neighbor's property and the alleyway. That elevation turned out to be 1 inches. So that, that's a problem. But having said that, I think the resolution that has been arrived at, although I know that the neighbor is not happy with it, but in my view, I think the neighbor, and we might hear from the neighbor later on, but the neighbor wants the alleyway to go back to the way it was originally. That's what he's asking for. The paving of that alleyway was part of the site plan. It was approved. The only mistake or the only difference was the elevation. So to have it go back to a dirt road is not a reasonable request, in my opinion. And as I said the last time, as long as the access to that area that belongs to the neighbor, if he can get his car in there, is resolved, I think that's the important thing. And I believe that this plan, unless somebody or the neighbor or anybody else can show me otherwise, I believe this does that. So, in my opinion, I think we've come to the end of the road here. I think all the issues have been resolved with this particular plan. And I hope we can move on and approve the application.
Just so that I'm clear, so in your view, the elevation issue regarding the neighbor's access is fully resolved, and that's no longer a
The way
problem?
the way I understand it, it's going to be, the elevation is reduced, there's going to be some grading, there'll be a slight slope, but there will be no problem accessing the neighbor's yard with a car.
Okay, very well.
And also the drainage has been addressed as well, which was also very important.
Thank you. Michael?
I'm happy that the building height was resolved. I love the landscaping and the softening of the boulders. I love the tree. And I agree with Lou about the alley. And I'm going to be in the minority here. That sidewalk is a mess. It is a mess. And don't try to tell me it's not. People with mobility issues are going to be complaining about that. And even though, it says you don't have to do it, you probably should have thought about that. It's glaring to me. It's glaring to me. So maybe the town needs to come up with a comprehensive sidewalk plan for Montauk. So there's some congruous with people who might very well park their car and walk to the next shop. Now, there's probably nothing we can do now about it. The planning department, I gotta lean on them, but boy, I'm just not happy about that for someone who likes to walk around. So that's it.
Thanks, Michael. Bruce?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both of you guys. I think the sidewalk is, obviously that's a big issue, but I think, terminating it at the retaining wall is probably the best resolution of the problem, unfortunately. Obviously that's something that should have been thought about on the outset. Absolutely. Tara, thank you for clearing up the issue with the landscaping and the tree. I think that's actually a great idea. The canopy obviously is up high enough where if you're in your car, you can see around the corner. I think I agree with you as well as, the low bushes. Obviously there's a maintenance issue. If they're not maintained, they grow high, you lose your sight lines. So I think the addition of those trees, I think, is a great idea. in terms of the alleyway, maybe we could hear from Drew about the design and resolution of that, because I'm still a little
Yeah, I think that's a
Little-
really good idea.
sort of,
Mr. Bennett, if you wouldn't mind, a little presentation?
Good evening, Drew Bennett here on behalf of the applicant and the owner.
Welcome.
So I was last here on this application in November where I heard the concerns of the board as well as the neighbor. After that meeting in November, I met with both Mr. Martell for well over an hour, probably almost 2 hours. I've also communicated with his sister Lee, who's been very pleasant to deal with. We have gone out and taken a lot of spot elevations to try to get creative, to try to figure out how to best transition the alley on a sloped property. And we believe we've come up with not an ideal solution, but probably the best solution. Again, this was a dirt unimproved alley that is now improved, and it's built onto a hillside. And normally when you do a road on a slope, the neighboring properties to the road have to sort of adjust the road shoulder gets adjusted slightly. So if you're on the uphill side or the downhill side, you sort of adjust to it to make the road function the way it needs to function, or in a conventional manner. In this case, they want to be able to park at the rear of their property, which is unimproved parking, sort of a grass, gravelly area, and I totally understand that. The tip-up was done the person who was doing the paving at the time was probably doing the right thing, because without the tip-up, the water would flow onto their property, and that would be a whole nother set of problems. So it's clear that in its existing configuration, you're not able to drive over the tip-up and onto this unimproved area for them to park. And so what we're proposing to do is to remove the tip-up and roll the shoulder or roll the portion of the asphalt, and I can go over to the picture here, maybe. So the property line here is about 70 feet, 75 feet, something like that. And we're proposing to take out the tip-up over about 35 to 40 feet, if I recall, and cut the asphalt back 4 or 5 feet and drop the edge of the road and remove the tip-up altogether, and there'll be a smooth transition to allow someone to drive over that. And the discussion has been, we want to have a low-clearance vehicle as sort of our design intent, or design vehicle. And I think I spoke to Lee, we'd like to be able to have a Prius be able to drive across it. I drive a Jeep, obviously I can drive across it, but, so that was the intent. And why did we pick 35 feet? Because it allows them to have 3 parking spaces. And a diagonal, this sort of trapezoid here is enough spaces for 3 cars. And so this would remain as a tip-up, a little piece up here would remain as a tip-up. Most of the water flows in this direction. In fact, it does flow in this direction currently. What we don't want to have happen is this area that we cut back and tilt the direction, eliminate the edge, basically, to flow into the property and cause flooding onto their property. So we've designed 2 dry wells to collect that.
Okay.
And as part of this plan, somewhere over here, there's some notes in terms of how we're going to proceed with the work, means and methods, and I've offered to supervise the work so that the design intent comes out as we would like it to, so that it's functional for a low clearance vehicle.
So you're going to use dry wells, not a storm drain?
They're dry wells, which
I mean, is it going to be,
all the same thing.
Okay.
They are storm drains. They're just connected to infiltration, the concrete infiltration structures. We locally refer to them as dry wells.
okay. I was thinking you could maybe get a Triumph or some, or an MG or
The
something.
intent is that,
Look, obviously, if you're talking about a 4-wheel drive vehicle or a Jeep or something, that's not a problem.
And I wrote a letter to the planning board, I think, in terms of, ultimately, well, I'll leave it at that.
Right, no, I got you. Now, what are you going to do, amend the plans? Is that how it's going to be, what are we going to do?
Amend the plan?
Well, I don't know, I'm asking, how do we know that it's happening?
Well, this plan shows the proposed steps. You could make it a condition that however you decide to go, in, out, or another alternative. And then I think that this plan has been pretty well vetted. So at least from my point of view, so,
It seems like you know what you're going to be doing, so.
yeah. Yes, please.
So, Drew, I guess just, could you explain to me how you're going to get water to the two dry walls?
Yeah.
How you're going to,
So these gray lines here,
yeah, I got that.
contour intervals that I
Yeah.
measured the elevations. And so we're going to, and the slope goes this way currently. And so we're going to introduce a small slope that goes this way. It's just dropping, it's like eliminating a curve.
Yeah, I've got it. Okay.
And
Yep.
then there's going to be, rather than having it just drop off, we're going to have to feather it out.
Right.
I think was the
Okay.
word, which I think was a good word. And the size of the dry walls is more than adequate for the water that will be directed there.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Drew, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm sure we're going to hear from the neighbors, and I did read their letter to the board as to why they're not happy with this plan. But I'm curious, why do you think this plan solves the solution? And what is it that the neighbor, what problem does the neighbor have with this solution?
Well, I'll let the neighbors speak.
Yeah, I
for
was going to
that.
say, maybe we should let them.
Well, how do you answer their contention that this does not meet their satisfaction?
I'll do the best I can. And
Would actually,
The reason I'm curious about that is because I do want to get your opinion as to how you addressed that very important issue, which was that they couldn't get their car into their driveway. So why do you think that this solves the problem? And why do you think that what they're saying is not?
Okay, let me give it a crack.
Okay.
So the alley is owned by the town, right? And as part of our site plan approval, one of the conditions was for us to improve the alley or pave it, right? So that was part of our scope of work, so to speak. And so it provides a functional roadway behind the stores, both for people to be able to access behind their stores and to park behind their stores and so on and so forth. They want to be able to park behind their property. Lee showed me a picture of how they used to park a vehicle. I think they gave the board the photograph in November. It's an older photograph. I think there's a Ford Bronco is the photograph. So I think it's probably the 70s or 80s. Some of the aerial photographs I've been shown, I believe the tenant who's been parking in the rear, and I'll let Lee speak to this or others, was probably parking on the dirt in the unimproved alley. It may not have been parking on the grass, but either way, they want to be able to park behind the property. And so when we first had started this conversation, we said, we'll provide you with a driveway apron, which is when I first started, 10 minutes ago, I said, when you usually do a road, the uphill people have to, there's a transition on the shoulders to make everybody come to have a smooth transition to the road. So we said, we'll provide you a driveway entrance, and they didn't want a driveway entrance. In other words, we would just put in asphalt or gravel or whatever material would be happy so that they could drive over and access their area. And that wasn't something that they wanted. They wanted to have it, I think somebody used the way it was. And there's a lot of things I wish were the way it was. But considering that we improved the alley, a town-owned alley, it's, there needs to be sort of a give and take on all parties who are going to benefit from the alley. And the tip-up was a mistake because they can't cross over it, but I think the modification allows them to both utilize the alley and also access the park at the rear of their property for at least 3 cars. We have addressed the risk of stormwater, flooding the backyard. So I think we have addressed the concerns. Again, the design intent or the design vehicle that we're trying to use is a low clearance vehicle. And so I think we've from a functional point of view, we've delivered, I think, what's important from my point of view.
So what they've been doing for decades, they can now resume doing with this plan.
They can park behind their property without, when we get done, they'll be able to park behind their property.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, Ed, Jen, do you have anything else you want to add on this?
Drew, if you wouldn't mind, what was my question? I'm sorry, I have COVID brain. Something about the parking. I'm sure it'll come back to me. I'm sorry.
Let's hand it off to Ed,
Yeah,
and then maybe you'll be able to remember. So Ed, do you have anything you want to add on this?
I do, yes, as a matter of fact, yeah. And I wanted to thank Drew especially for really doing a lot of work on this project to make this thing right. I really do appreciate that. And and I just wanted to point out that, like Lou said, as much as we all know that everybody in Montauk wants Dr. Molly to start up her practice, and as much as it may be true, Andy, that people are getting used to the way the boulders look, this isn't the project that was approved, right? Plain and simple, right? The planning board is not holding this up, right? Mistakes were made in construction. A lot of changes were made that we didn't really know about. We spent a lot of time early on talking about this sidewalk. And, we've been trying to make this South Euclid Avenue sidewalk situation better, across multiple projects for years. And, here's another missed opportunity, So, let's not forget that, we're really trying to now kind of backtrack and make this right and make the most of the situation. And I think everybody involved in this project knows the planning board doesn't love to do let's, do what you want and let's sort of figure out later how to sort of make it okay. This is not our favorite kind of thing. But having said that, I think we're at kind of a reasonable place. I do reluctantly agree that the staircase for the sidewalk is really not practical in any way, shape, or form. Unhappily, I agree that that's what we should do is abandon that. I actually did have the idea that the trees with a higher canopy on the Essex Street side were really a good way to go, and I really like that. I do think that that whole boulder thing does need to be softened. And and then finally, the other big thing, of course, is the alley. And I think, based on what Drew just said about that and the fact that our consulting engineer has weighed in on it as well, I think this may well be as good as it gets. But, we'll have to hear from the owners of 813 about what they think about it.
Thanks very much, Ed. Jen, did it come back to you?
It did come back to me. Two things. First, about the alley. I know it's a town-owned alley. Was improving it a condition of the original site plan? I think, is that, okay. So that, just for clarification on my part. And, just to what was just said, I agree. I think that while we seem to be very close in this matter. I've only been on the planning board for a month now, but I do feel like it should be stated that the holdup wasn't the planning board. It was really the fact that the site plan that was approved wasn't what was built for whatever, for whatever reasons. But I am really happy that we're in a place where it seems like the end is near for all of you who have been doing this for so many years. And I really feel like the alley, the reconstruction of the alley, the way you've laid it out is the answer.
Thanks very much, Jen. If everybody else has spoken, I'll just say that I share Michael's frustration, and really, frankly, I think the entire board's frustration with how the sidewalk ended. It's a movie title, I think. But I think we have to be pragmatic about it. And it is true, as I think Luke just pointed out, that if you go down South Euclid, there are a couple of other examples, not too far different from what we are now faced with. But, again, I drive around town sometimes and look at projects that this board's approved, and I'm generally happy with what, we've done, but there are a few that I look at and go, yeah, maybe we missed the mark on that. And if this had been us doing it, I'd say this was one of those ones that we missed the mark on, but it wasn't. It was the applicant who did it, and but we're going to move along and go to the next thing. I think that the biggest issue that remains is, of course, the access to the neighbor off the alley. Now, I see the neighbors are here, and I'm gathering they wish to speak.
I'd like to speak.
Well, you have your representatives, and it's up to Mr. Hammer. I'm sorry?
You know what, I think we're going to let the neighbor and then...
Yeah, no, thank you. That was my first question. I want to make sure that there's no objection on your part to having the neighbor speak, and you've heard this before from me. This is not a public hearing. This is an opportunity for you to make us aware of conditions on the ground that we otherwise wouldn't know about. I'm glad to hear the applicant say that they have no objection, so that we're all on the same page in terms of letting someone other than the applicant speak. So, folks, Mr. Martell, Ms. Burtz, whoever, go right ahead.
Good evening. Once again, I've come down from Maine.
I'm sorry to name, address, and
Yes,
spell your name.
I've come down from Maine today to be here for this important meeting. My name is Lee Burse, and I am one of the owners of 813, 809 on Main Street in Montauk. I have a brief statement that my brother has asked me to read, if I may.
Please.
The map 174, the business district map of Montauk, was originally surveyed and developed by Carl Fisher of the Montauk Beach Company in 1926. The site work that was incorporated had the topography and the area ensured in 1926 that the drainage would not be a problem for the entire business district. It's interesting, you can see the photos at the library in Montauk of the excavators and machines all laying out the business properties. Each block incorporated a 20-foot alleyway in the middle to make sure that businesses could have an unfettered access behind all of the buildings in each block if they so desired. Eventually, all of the alleyways were taken over by the town of East Hampton from the Montauk Beach Company. As a result, in many cases, the alleyways were left vacant, partially used, or fully developed. In cases where the alleyway became fully developed, the topography of the area was already in place, and the development occurred without disruption or disturbing of the alleyway improvement. The case we have today is very problematic in that in the overfilling of the site at 94 South Euclid has changed the original topography of that land and is the reason that we now have the situation that we have. The town-owned alleyway borders us on 813 and 809 to the south. It has been taken over by Mr. Beckman, who has imposed his standards and has perpetuated them now on us. So, who is responsible for fixing this? I would say that it's the town. You are the owner of the alleyway. You have the legal authority and the responsibility to require a reasonable solution. As the adjoining property owner, I would suggest that the Beckman developed alleyway be rebuilt, as the town engineer suggested. Mr. Beckman's plan called for 1.5 inches of asphalt. We have a alleyway that is 18 inches above that. Here's the photograph we sent to you, showing the alleyway as it was. Yes, you have it there. You can see
No topography.
that the difference, the grade between the two properties is hardly noticeable. The reason this has occurred is because they fill the property in, they put a foundation that is what, 2 feet higher than on the plan, and then had to fill in next to the foundation. That filling in has then caused this big gap between what was originally there and what is now there. And then when these asphalt people came in and laid down a foot of underpinning and then the road on top. This isn't reasonable. It wasn't in the plan. And now we're stuck with, well, you can't have access to your property for over 6 months, and now there's a curb going to be there, and we have probably a reasonable solution. Had reasonable solutions been proposed initially? Mr. Beckman and the building of this property didn't do anything reasonably. They did what they felt like. And I don't think we should have to go along with something that restricts our access to our property because that curb is going to remain there. And when I asked Tina at the planning, I said, well, what if I want to put 10 parking spaces behind my property? How do I go about getting rid of the curb? And she said, well, of course, you'd need to develop a site plan and then pay to have the curb, I guess, removed. I want it removed. And I want a reasonable way to access our property. We shouldn't be so affected by the inadequacy and proper planning that should have been done. And you have the ability, and I think the responsibility, to make sure that this is more reasonable for this of us who are affected so dramatically. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Very well, thank you. Does Mr. Martell wish to speak as well? I apologize. Thank you, I'm sorry.
How's your hand, Lou?
It's still not well.
Me too. It's been a process. It's been a process. So how do we get here anyway? Look, we all want resolution, but resolution. We all want resolution, but resolution.
You know what? I'm sorry to do so. Could you just spell your name?
Oh,
and
sorry.
give us-
Yeah,
and your
Tom
address?
McMorrow, McMorrow, tenant with my wife for over 10 years at 813 Montauk Highway.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I say, we all want resolution, and we certainly don't want neighbors quarreling. Now, I know, I see Kathleen Beckman is sitting here, and I've said hi to her for 10 years, But here we are. We've got a problem. And I think that we need to go back and look at how we got to where we are. Back in 2008, now, I want to point out that Drew, on November 15, said that he's been working on this project for 12 years. He made that, point. But that he was not involved at all during the actual construction. And then afterwards, yes, now he's again involved. And that's important. I'll get to that in a second. But in 2018, this board approved a description of proposed work to construct a 2-story, 2,066 square foot footprint building with 1,811 square feet, first floor veterinary office use, 583, second floor, to contain a regular office use. So I'm going to come back to that in a second, because that's now become actually quite important. If you go through and you go to page 3 of the 2018 approval, you'll see what is a boilerplate point, but is in every site plan approval, and this is very important for this board. Adjacent properties. The proposed use will not prevent the orderly and reasonable use of adjacent properties. That's not what happened here. You get to the end of the site plan, again, this is boilerplate stuff, but validity of approval. If any condition of this resolution is not met, or is not met within the prescribed time period, all approvals, permits, or authorizations granted shall be deemed void and have no effect. Okay, that was then. Then we go to 2022, and we have a site plan modification. And it's over that sidewalk. And this is the second time that you have this board, I mean, not you all personally, but this board said, remember, who is doing the proposing here? It's the applicant. It's not you, it's not me, it's not Lee, it's not Jimmy Martell. It's the applicant. The applicant is the one coming to you saying, 1.5 inches of asphalt. I'm going to connect the sidewalks. In 2022, the applicant specifically came to you and said, I want to reshape the sidewalk, but committed that they were going to connect those sidewalks. So I want to now say to the board this, that Tina has done an incredible job, and what she wrote here is great, but I want you also to go back to what she wrote for the November 15 discussion. There's a couple of points in there. She talks about the raised elevation. Lee said 2 feet, it's actually almost 2.5. And Lee, Drew, let's see, it says here, this is Tina's words. The site's higher than authorized elevation has ramifications throughout the site. That's on page 3 from November 15. Then next paragraph she writes, and this is, the planning department notes that the elevation issues present on this site should have been evident to the design engineer and construction team from the initial conception of design to construction, and that it is not in the best interest of good planning to make such a significant change to an approved plan without accounting for how such change will impact the overall design of the site and its relations to its surroundings. That is what happened here.
I don't mean to cut you off, but...
You want me to move it along?
Please, if you don't mind, because we do have other plans.
One thing about that Tina mentioned, which I think is interesting, in that November 15th piece, is about the windows that were added to the basement. And she put that forward as a possible problem. And then the board said, well, it's okay, but I want to point out something to you, that Tina said that could be a possible third use in the property. That the applicant herself... Excuse me.
Please.
Address the board.
Mr. McMurray, address your comments to us.
Yes.
Frankly, please, ma'am, you'll have your opportunity.
But all I'm going to say is that the applicant wrote to the East Hampton Star letter saying that they wanted a possible third use, so they knew it all along.
Okay.
They knew it all along, and that's why the property was raised, and that's why we're dealing with this alleyway.
Thank you.
I thank you very much all for your time, but let me finish saying this, though.
All right.
Site plan approval. What does it mean? Does it have any meaning? I mean, if someone can come to you, make a commitment on a site plan, and then go do whatever they want, do we need a site plan approval process?
We're not dealing with philosophical questions tonight, but thank you very much.
Existential.
Existential, yes. All right. Yeah, additionally, ask your representatives, Mr. Hammer, anything else? Or you wish to have your client?
I don't object if Molly wants.
I just have a couple of funny things to say.
All right, listen, it's your time and your presentation and your application. Doctor, welcome.
I'm very excited to have this animal hospital in Montauk. Can't tell you how much. We have no...
Need your name.
Oh, Dr. Molly Miosek, Miosek, 31 South Ferncroft, Montauk, New York.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you listening to me. Looking forward to this building very much to serve the animals and the people of Montauk and my clients of East Hampton as well. We have no third purpose for the basement. Right now, it is a staff gym. We moved our personal gym to our basement so that we can be healthy. There's no third purpose of our basement at all, and there never will be. I hope you understand that. Looking back historically, our neighbors at Martell's, there's no parking spots on their property because I've looked up their building for sale. They don't have approved parking. So the fact that we're sitting here for months arguing about the tenants of Martell's having ability to park, he doesn't have an approved parking spot. There's nothing on the plans that I can see on the computer, anywhere I search, on their website where they're trying to sell their building, there's no approved parking other than in the front where the gas station is. So it really hurts me, the fact that we're fighting for this man to park in a parking spot that never existed. He's been parking in the public alley. And
please.
And we were okay with that for 10 years. That was our dirt lot. We had a dirt lot. That's what we had. We purchased that property from my mother-in-law because she and my husband purchased it thinking we would develop something good for Montauk. And all we've done since we purchased that property has been belittled and dragged through the dirt by the likes of many people. And all I'm trying to do is make an animal hospital. And I don't think it's fair that we're getting dragged by a parking spot because there's a lot, 2 lots from us that the Martells own where that man can park both of his cars. He doesn't have the right to yell at us about his lack of his ability to get to a parking spot that doesn't exist and never has. Look it up. It never existed. He was parking in the alley. If he wants to park on his grass driveway, so be it. Go over the little 2.5, 3-inch curb. But it should not stop me from my business, my livelihood, our family's livelihood. And Michael, I hate to point you out, but I'm really disappointed by what you said about this stairway. That staircase is an abomination. Oh, oops, took your word. There should never be a stairway on that 3-foot distance. It just makes no sense to me. It's a 3-foot staircase and a foot, I don't know how many of you people have seen it, but anyone who thinks that that's a good idea to have that staircase, it's a legality. Anyone can fall down there, break an ankle, a dog, a cat, an old woman. It makes no sense to have that stairway at all. The alley is perfect. You know why? Because my husband's a landscaper. We work with 2 engineers to make that alley, and it is perfect, just the way it is. Rhett spent hours watching 3-hour storms come through the alley, and that water runs perfect. Nothing should be done to the alley. It runs perfect. There's no need to anything. That property is perfect. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, if anybody on the board has anything else they want this point, I think maybe we should just move to the questions. Before I,
Can I just wanted to say, it seems obviously emotions are very high here. However, I do, the sidewalk idea, in theory, is a great thing. And, I think comprehensively, it would be great if there was a more comprehensive review of all these areas. But Montauk has never had that. As a matter of fact, one funny thing is, prior to 1981, map number 174, downtown Montauk, did not have plan review at all. It was excluded. So a lot of Montauk was developed outside of site plan review. That's why Montauk's a little bit funky. There's a lot of these sites that are pre-exist any of our regulations. With respect to the alleyway, the one thing I did want to say is that alleyway, it certainly can accommodate any additional use that wants to be put there, but I can't design for something that doesn't exist right now. Essentially, that was a dirt parking spot. It is correct that there was not improved parking there, but if you wanted to, so we're talking about expanding what was not an existing use by providing for 3 parking spaces. There could certainly be more provided. There could be more access. It's basically an engineering issue, but we're designing for something that's not in front of the board right now, and that would be, the onus would be on the person who's going to redevelop or add to that use right now. So what we're doing is not going to preclude anything from happening in this area or preclude access from being taken or expanded in any fashion that they want to do in the future. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
thanks very much.
Thank you.
And Matt, could you let us see the smiling faces of Jen and Ed so that we can see them? It'll make it easier for us to all talk. Or whomever has to play with the magic screen. So I wanted to, just before we go on to the questions, I want to ask Jen and Ed if they have anything that they want to add, or we're going to move on to the questions.
Okay, Tina, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
There you
Thanks
go.
very much. Jen, Ed, do either of you have anything you want to add before we go on to the questions?
I do not.
I do not.
Nice,
Nope.
thanks. All right, very good. I'll go around, I'll just, everybody answer yes or no. Does the board accept the landscape plans, including potentially large trees on South Essex Avenue and the instruction with South Euclid Ave and the, I think you mean intersection, not instruction, yes, and the intersection with South Euclid Avenue?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Both of you, okay, very good. Is the applicant required to build stairs to connect their sidewalk to the sidewalk on 92 South Euclid, which requires permission from the adjacent property owner on 92 South Euclid? And triggers a potential site plan requirement?
No.
No one likes the stairs, by the way, and I'm ultimately, I am one of those who don't like the stair-rise idea. So, yeah, we have to live with what's there.
So you're saying it's a question of, is the applicant required to build stairs? So that's a no.
No.
Correct.
That's a no.
It's a no,
No.
No.
6 no's. Finally, does the board agree that the scope of the alley improvements as currently proposed is acceptable?
Yes.
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 Yes, yes?
Yes.
There you have it. Thank you all. I know this has been an emotional issue for everyone, and I appreciate your input. The board, I should say, apologize for that. Board appreciates your input, and you're coming out and participating. Record's kind of closed.
I just have a question as to when and what we have to approve for the going down onto our property. How is that process going to take place?
Tina, you want to?
So, yeah, I mean, that'll be the next step. We have to present construction plans to the property owner, and
So it'll follow the usual.
attorney's office.
Point out, I'm happy to review it with my office is right in Montauk, if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, I think that going forward, thank you, Mr. Hammer, for that. I think that, now that you have gone through the crucible of the planning, of the planning board, and I shouldn't be so dramatic, let's try and all, work together here to make sure that we get the best result possible.
Thank you.
For all of you going forward. Again, thank you all for coming out. Okay. Now, we've got 3 more matters on. The first is, I want to take care of just the 2 ministerial things. First is there's this extension of time resolution. Bruce, it's yours. Would you read it in?
By resolution adopted June 5th, 2019, and subsequently modified April 7th, 2017, the resolution, the planning board granted site plan special permit approval to the above-mentioned application, subject to various conditions. And this is for Smart Store site plan special permit, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-184-1-811. By letter dated January 29th, 2024, David Kirst, attorney for the applicant, has informed the planning board that additional time is needed within which to obtain a building permit for the remaining phases and has requested an extension of time. Based on the foregoing, the planning board hereby extends the time within which the applicant must comply with the conditions of the board's resolution for a period of 1 year within which to obtain a building permit or until April 7th, 2025. In all other respects, the original resolution of approval as extended is hereby reaffirmed. Dated February 7th, 2024.
You want to move that in?
I would like to move that in.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can I ask a question about the dates on the top? By resolution adopted June 19th and subsequently modified April 7th, 2017. How could it be subsequently modified 2 years earlier than it was adopted?
Very good. Well.
Well done, Jen.
Tina, do we know anything about that?
I didn't prepare.
Do you know anything about that? Do we need to table this? Do we know what we're going to change them to? Yeah, well, let's not go for April 2027. That would be a bad change. You know what? Let me ask you, is there a time urgency on this right now? Or can we put it over to the next meeting? Hate to make you read it again.
I could look it up right now if you guys talk about something else.
All right, we'll
What would we be talking about?
we will be talking about the minutes. That's the next thing, yes. During COVID, we stopped doing the minutes, approving the minutes, and we have been since redirected that we shall prepare minutes, and they will be part of the record, and we will review them and approve them. So I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to read the minutes. And if someone, is there anyone who hasn't had an opportunity yet to read the minutes? I hope that we all have.
Yep.
Can somebody make a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, well, first, does anyone have any changes to the minutes they wish to make?
Nope.
Anyone? Going once, twice, 3 times? Okay, will someone please make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
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 6-0. Okay. Tina, we give you enough time?
Come on, Sam.
If not, you know what,
Good after, yeah.
yeah, Jen, I think that's a good point. I mean, if it was anything other than a date, I might be, we could be willing to budget. I don't want to use that
Yeah.
word. But we might be able to modify it. Let's bring this back at the next meeting, okay? Jody, can we do that? Thanks. Okay. That leaves us with the issue regarding the new senior center, continuing discussion. I'm going to bring a little background and talk about how I feel about it, and then we're going to throw it open to the board to discuss. At our last meeting on January 24th, we took up a letter from the planning director, Jeremy Samuelson, dated January 19th, 2024, that advised us that the East Hampton Town Board was requesting lead agency status for the new senior center. And further, the letter further advised that if we did not respond to this request for lead agency status within 30 days of the date of the letter, we being the planning department, will assume that the planning board has no objections. The next day, January 25th, I wrote a letter to the planning director, Samuelson, and stated, please be advised that at its regularly scheduled meeting of January 24th, 2024, the planning board by a vote of 6-1 objected to the East Hampton Town Board requesting lead agency status for the new senior center. Then later that day, I received a telephone call from Jeff Bragman, an attorney in town, and he called and said to me that our letter was inadequate and needed to, that's my word actually, I don't remember the word that he used. We spoke, and the letter needed to affirmatively state that the planning board wanted to be lead agency and not just that we objected to the town board being lead agency. So I wrote to the town attorney, and I've shared with the board what I wrote to the town attorney. I also sent an email to Mr. Bragman telling him that I was going to write to the town attorney, and you all were CC'd on that. And that was also CC'd with planning staff. And I wrote to the town attorney, and I shared that letter only with this board, because it's privileged, and so I'm not going to quote it, and I'm not going to use the specific words, but it'll suffice to say that I asked whether or not Mr. Bragman was correct, and I also asked for a meeting with the town attorney in advance of tonight's meeting to discuss not only the SECRA regulations, but the analysis under County of Monroe versus City of Rochester. And I should be clear right now, tonight, that the issues involving SECRA are entirely separate. The issues involving SECRA regarding the question of lead agency under SECRA, I should say, are entirely separate from the Monroe analysis. And I should also point out that in our conversation of January 24th, we may have conflated at points in that conversation the issues of lead agency under SECRA and Monroe analysis. But in any event, the town attorney responded, and again, I deem his communication, which I shared with all of you, with the board, I should say, to be a privileged communication. So I'm not going to quote that communication, but the bottom line is that given what the town attorney views as differing positions of the planning board and the town attorney cannot represent the planning board in the senior center matter, and that the planning board must employ special counsel regarding that matter. Now, I've located counsel, I've interviewed a number of attorneys, and I've located counsel who can represent us, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, we need to bring you up to date, I need to bring you up to date, I should say, and pose two threshold questions for the board. The January 19th letter to which we responded did not have attached to it an EAF 1, Part 1, as required by SECRA. And so on Monday, February 5th, a new letter went out to all of us, as well as, I understand, to the ZBA and ARB and other agencies. And I want to read that letter right now into the record in its entirety. This is dated February 5th, 2024, to East Hampton Town Involved Agency, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Architectural Review Board. Proposed Town of East Hampton Senior Center, 403 Abraham's Path.
I'm going to go to that. I've read that letter.
Okay. I'm going to wait till you get back, though, before I continue after I finish the letter. All right. The Town of East Hampton Town Board is considering the construction of a new 22,000 square foot senior center, on-site parking, walking trails, and other related site improvements, parentheses, the project, close parentheses, on 7.008 acres of the premises known as 403 Abraham's Path in Amagansett, New York. Said premises being known as District 0300, Section 166.00, Block 03.00, lots 010.001 and 010.002 on the Suffolk County tax map. The project includes the proposed subdivision of the subject premises to separate the senior center parcel, lot 010.002, from the residential parcel, parentheses, lot 010.001. Pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617.4 of the implementing regulations of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, the town board has identified the project as a Type 1 action requiring coordinated environmental review among the involved agencies. Your agency has been identified as an involved agency pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617.2T. Because your agency may have jurisdiction to fund, approve, and/or undertake one or more aspects of the project. Accordingly, please find a true and complete copy of the full Environmental Assessment Form, FEAF, Part 1 for the project, dated January 4, 2024, with project narrative prepared by L.K. McLean Associates, P.C., dated November 2023, and visual renderings. Please take notice that the Town of East Hampton Town Board intends to declare itself lead agency for this project unless written objection from your agency indicating its intent to declare itself lead agency for this project is received within 30 days of the date of this letter. Any response to this letter should be in writing and directed to my attention at 300 Pantego Place, Suite 105, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Very truly yours, Jeremy Samuelson, Planning Director. I'm going to wait for Lou to get back.
What's a Knox box?
What is?
What's a Knox box?
Knox box is a little box about this big with a code, and it contains the key to get into the house. So if the house is on fire, fire department has access, grabs the key,
Gotcha.
and unlocks the door.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now that I've read the letter, let me say, this letter, returning to what I was saying, this letter supersedes the January 19th letter and triggers a new 30-day deadline. And it requires that this board ask two questions and answer two questions. Number one, do we want to rescind or negate our January 25th letter? That's question one. Question two, now that we have the EAF and now that we have this February 5th letter, do we want to assert that we have no objection to the town being lead agency and that we do not have an intent to declare ourselves lead agency for the project? If we answer yes to both of those questions, then this conversation regarding lead agency is over. But if we answer no, and we don't want to rescind our January 25th letter, or if we want to respond to the February 5th letter and object to the town being lead agency, and as well indicate our intent to declare ourselves lead agency, then if we answer no to those two questions, I'm going to suggest that we take up the issue of whether we should vote to retain counsel. Now, as I see it, the planning board needs legal advice, which includes a number of issues. One, how should the planning board respond to the February 5th, 2024 letter? In other words, how do we give a response that reflects the planning board's interests, legally speaking? Number two, what standards does the DEC commissioner consider when making a decision regarding a lead agency dispute? And I should say that if there's a dispute between, for example, the planning board and the town board over who should be lead agency, that is a dispute that is resolved by the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation of the state of New York. Three, whether the planning board has grounds to object to the town board's declaration of lead agency status, and whether we should assert that the planning board should be lead agency. Another legal question I see is how can the planning board effectively participate in the secret process if the town board is not lead agency? And finally, in terms of SECRA, and again, this is just my take, I should add very clearly, you are absolutely free to disagree and tell me that I'm wrong and these aren't concerns. But again, these are the things that I, reviewing this, think are important. How can the planning board influence the text of any DEC determination if the town is determined to be lead agency? Now, I've read the EAF from cover to cover with all of its attachments, and I have some questions about it, as I'm sure other members of the board do as well. I'm not going to deal with that right this moment. The question that needs to be, we need to answer is whether we need to be lead agency to effectively deal with those issues, or are we willing to accept the role that we would have if the town board is lead agency? And I should also add, speaking for myself again, I feel more comfortable answering a lot of those questions with the advice of counsel. I also think that if we have counsel, I'd like to have counsel deal with questions involving the Monroe test, what it is, how would it apply to the senior center, what the planning board can have any influence regarding the Monroe analysis, and what remedies the planning board might have if we're aggrieved by the Monroe analysis. But the first and most important thing is we have a meeting on February 28th. So we don't have to act on anything right now, but we do have the letter. And if we have the letter wrong, we have to deal with it. We also we have the issue, though, that we can vote today on the question of whether we object to declaring lead agency status, and I think that we should take that vote now. I would like to have some conversation on that point. And again, assuming that, well, not assuming, but depending on how it goes, then we can talk about retaining counsel. So I open up the floor to discussion of do we want to rescind or, first question is, do we wish to rescind or negate our January 25th letter? Anyone?
I have a question before we have that question, if that's okay. I'm unclear as to the legal impetus for us. If we object to the town being lead agency, why do we have to declare ourselves lead agency? Can't we just object to them being lead agency?
Well, the letter that we have received states...
Well, the new one, yes. Okay.
The new letter.
Okay.
And the new letter differs from the old letter. I can read the old letter if you want.
No, it differs substantially.
It does
So
differ.
yeah.
Well, I'm skipping down to the final paragraph. Please take notice that the Town of East Hampton Town Board intends to declare itself lead agency for this project, and here's the key language, unless written objection from your agency indicating its intent to declare itself lead agency for this project is received within 30 days of the date of this letter.
Okay, so they're not asking for objections anymore. They're saying we're lead agency or you want to be lead agency.
Do we want, I should apologize.
Right,
To be lead agency. Now, again, we have, the first thing we have to deal with is our existing letter. And do we want to negate that, which, we have this new letter, which it's stated subsequent to the first letter. It sets a new 30-day trigger, and it asks a different question. So the first question we have to deal with is whether or not we want to withdraw that letter, our January 25th letter.
My opinion is that normally this kind of application, this application would have come in front of the planning board. And normally we would ask, as long as I've been here, these types of applications and what's expected of them, and the site plan review that we would have, we would normally call to be lead agency, have the lead agency. I know that the town board is considering applying the Monroe analysis. They haven't decided that yet. And I, as a planning board member, don't know and I haven't studied it enough, and I don't think it's my position anyway, to make a decision as to whether or not they should apply the Monroe analysis. So I put all that whole issue aside. So the only thing that I go by in making a decision with regard to these letters is whether or not this type of application, that notwithstanding the Monroe analysis action, would normally come in front of us. We would normally ask to be lead agent. So as it stands right now, the way I would respond to that letter, having said all that, is that, yes, we don't want the town board to take lead agency. We want that lead agency status.
Okay. All right, the specific question is about, is our January 25th letter, do we want to rescind that?
No.
Okay, fine. Michael?
I think we should rescind that letter.
You do, okay. Bruce?
No,
No, we shouldn't rescind it?
you should not.
Okay. Ed? Uh-oh.
Just so I
To
understand.
my left, so I went for Ed, sorry, Jen.
Sorry. But is I thought I understood that letter was no longer valid, kind of given.
Well, I'll tell you how I feel about that question. Probably, yeah. All right, probably, yeah. But I'm not keen on, I'm going to tell you how I feel about this. I don't want to do nothing. I don't want to do anything until I have counsel talking.
Yeah.
And maybe we should rescind it. Probably we should rescind it. Instinctively, we probably should rescind it because the new letter supersedes the old letter.
Right.
But there's no harm in keeping that objection letter of January 25th in place until we know what we're doing and where we're going.
Okay.
So as far as I'm concerned, yeah, you're right. It probably is, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to make that decision sitting here on my own.
Right.
That's my. Now look, I'm not telling you. You know me. If you don't feel that way, please. And same thing with you, Jen.
I gotta say one thing.
Yeah, go
So
ahead, Mike.
the
I'm sorry.
document we received with the 13-page EAF, there are 70 pages in that entire document that lay out what the town is going to do and what they are proposing to do. Like, it is meticulous, and having had at least 40 public meetings, is that the language there? Yeah.
All right, but the question is,
okay.
and I see, but again, I'm trying to keep us in a lane here and keep questions discreet. So, Ed?
Hi.
I don't think I got an answer from Ed. Do you want to rescind the January 25th letter?
Well, I don't really know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I mean, I feel like it is, under the circumstances, now not valid. So rescinding it or not rescinding it. I think now we're dealing with the new letter, right?
That'll be the next question. I'll come around on that next.
Okay.
I want to.
So if I have to do a yes, no.
Okay, very well. Now, I'm sorry, Jen, held you up there.
I also vote no because I believe that it's kind of a moot point given the new letter. So I don't think there's any benefit to rescinding it. So I would say no, we don't have to rescind it.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no to the question, do we want to rescind or negate our January 25th letter? Is that accurate?
And one yes.
So.
And what, that was the next thing. And one yes. So Jody, if you can know, we have 5 no, 1 yes, 1 absent. All right, now, the next question. Now that we have the EAF and now that we have this February 5th letter, do we want to assert that we have no objection to the town being lead agency? And again, I'll go around the table on this one. I'll start with you, Michael.
I have no objection with the town being lead agency. In this room, at yesterday morning, you had 8 or 9 seniors speaking of the importance of this project. And it is, like I said, they've had years to work on this. It is comprehensive, it is meticulous. And one of the seniors up there said, we're not getting any younger. So.
All right, thank you. Michael? The question is, do we, now that we have the EAF, now that we have the February 5th letter, do we want to assert, I'm going to read the language, our written objection that we indicate our intent to declare ourselves lead agency for the project?
Yes, we do declare our intent to be lead agency.
Bruce, thank you. Thank you. Bruce?
I think I'm changing my mind now. So, obviously, I'm new on here. I don't fully grasp the history of the process, the length, the evolution of this project, okay? Initially, if this came about today, I think I would say yes, we should, because any other project of this type would come in front of us. However, seeing that we have, whatever this is, 13 pages of what you're saying, 70 pages, there is obviously a lengthy history, a lengthy evolution, a lengthy design process to this all. I think that the town board has done their due diligence, and I think unfortunately, I think it's too late for us.
Well, you see, that's the thing. Is it? I mean, I've read the EAF. I presume you've read the EAF. I have some significant, let me put it this way. I have at least one significant dispute with the EAF, which I can go into if you want me to. I have issues with the and it's the same thing I had before you were here, is the traffic study.
Okay.
There's a response in the EAF that says, I think it's question 19. It says,
What page?
give me a moment, I'll find it. It says, where's it? 9? Bear with me.
The J, will the proposed action result in substantial increase in traffic?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Where is it?
The
J.
J,
Jay, on page 7.
page 7.
Oh.
No, I'm looking at a different J. Sorry. Thank you. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate substantial new demand for transportation facilities or services? Okay? Now, look.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want, are we going to make a case why we feel we should be lead agent? Which
Ultimately,
is no problem. I am prepared to do that if that's what we want to do.
Ultimately, if this board decides that it should be lead agency, and if the town continues to assert that it should be lead agency, then we will have to, and this is the part where
I mean tonight.
No.
I mean tonight, because I think we started on that path, and I'm prepared to give my argument as to why I think we should be lead agency, but I don't know if that's what we want to do tonight, or is that something that we should?
Well, what we need to do tonight is answer the two questions, whether or not we want to withdraw the old letter and whether we want to assert that we want to be lead agency. Those are the two things we're dealing with. We're dealing with, right now, the question of, do we think that we should be lead agency? And, just so that we're all...
But do we need to justify our...
Ultimately...
whatever answer we give to that question?
Ultimately, we would have to justify it. Ultimately, we would have to justify it if we decide that we wish to be lead agency. But, there are different things that you get if you're lead agency. You get to declare the necessity for an for an environmental impact statement. And I'm reading now from the Secra cookbook, which we all received in our little packages. And it says, Step 5, determine significance. The lead agency has 20 calendar days to make its determination of significance. If the lead agency finds that it does not have sufficient information to make this determination, it may request that the applicant provide it. The lead agency must make its determination within 20 days of receipt of all the information it reasonably needs. In determining significance, the lead agency must consider the whole action and the criteria, see section 617.7C, the EAF and any other information provided by the applicant, involved agency input where applicable, and public input. If the lead agency has determined the proposed action will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment, negative declaration, proceed to steps 5A, and then it talks about EIS. Now, the idea is, let me just finish my thought here. Apologize. This means that the person deciding whether or not it's a matter of significance, not the person, I should say, the agency that decides whether it's a matter of significance is the lead agency, and they must consider involved agency input. That would be us giving involved agency input. But what it wouldn't be is us, the planning board, as lead agency, deciding that any particular impact is so strong that it warrants I apologize, the language that it's a matter of significance. And I think that that decision is, and again, this is my opinion, and I'm not telling anyone else how to think, please, but I think that when it comes, and again, the only thing I'm focusing on is, because we only got the thing on Monday, and you know, I've read it, and traffic jumps out at me, that the idea that as their analysis, as the traffic analysis attached to the EAF says, that there's 139 cars at peak hour, and that means that according to the traffic analysis, that there's going to be no input on traffic. Well, you know, giving it the hard look, which we're supposed to do, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that the traffic analysis is accurate. I drive Abraham's Path regularly. It's how I get east. And I'm sorry, there's no mention, I don't think, and I could have read it too fast, that there's any mention of the athletic fields and tennis courts on Abraham's Path. I don't think that there's any real analysis. You know, they rely on a software program to say there's going to be no impact. Well, on its face, they're admitting 139 cars in the morning. They're building this project because, and it's somewhere in here in bold, because they anticipate more usage for it. So who knows if 139 is even accurate? But, you know, and the question is, should it be the town board or should it be us? Right. Well, we spend a lot of time on traffic studies. We've spent a lot of time in the Wayne Scott Commercial Center, to pick a prominent example, picking apart their traffic study and showing them why it's inadequate and why it doesn't reflect the actual situation on the ground. And if you think about other applications that we've had, how much time have we spent on the former nightclub, what's it called, Civilin, over on 3 Mile Harbor? How much time did we spend talking about where the curb cut should be? How much time do we spend talking about whether or not the trucks are going to line up and block traffic on 3 Mile Harbor? Now, these are, and again, I'm only focusing on traffic because I drive. And you might focus, Lou, on water.
No, actually, I'm not focusing on any item in the EAF. The reason that you think we should have lead agency is because you picked out one item that you disagree with how they're judging it. I think that we should determine whether or not we should be lead agency as opposed to the town board, not with regard to any of those environmental questions. Because, you could go either way, and they could have a very good justification for answering it the way they did. Doesn't mean that they're negligent. It's just that they have a different opinion than you do on traffic. That shouldn't be the determining factor as to who gets lead agency. I think what I would use as a judgment as to who should be lead agency, and I'm leaning towards the planning board being lead agency, is that these questions are more objectively reviewed by a independent board, which we are, and because of our objective review, I think we are the best suited to make those decisions with regard to secret, and we should be lead agency.
We come to the same conclusion for different reasons.
Okay. And I could go on further. I could make a more extensive argument with regard to that, but I don't think we want to get into that tonight because we'll be here after midnight.
Well, yeah, but you see, all we have to do tonight is agree for whatever
because
reasons.
you've got all those other steps about talking to lawyers and,
Well, that's just one quick question that.
And also how this Monroe analysis thing works out.
Well, that's a separate issue.
I know,
from this question, and I really have to work hard to make sure we
But
stay
anyway,
in
I've
our
got a
lane.
bunch of reasons why I think we should be lead agency.
And to that point, if this board decides that it wants to be lead agency, those questions are all going to need to be included in whatever response letter, and again, I'm not a secret lawyer. I don't know whether it's an affidavit, a letter, I think it's a letter, but whatever it is, it has a format. And we need secret counsel to tell us that we're doing it in the right format. That's the biggest single reason why I want an attorney who is experienced and knowledgeable in secret to tell us this is how you do it. This is the format that it should take. I would suspect that all that stuff that you have in mind and all the reasons why would go into that letter, affidavit, response, whatever it might ultimately be. So, I'll just finish mine and then I'll jump to you. So the point is that as I see it, this board has the expertise to deal with, and I'm only pointing it out because it's the only thing that I'm thinking about, traffic issues. But there are those of us who are very knowledgeable in water issues and understand flow and things like that. And there are those of us who know the long-eared bat and those sorts of things, other environmental concerns that may say that, you know what, this board is the expert. This board is the one that deals with water issues and the long-eared bat all the time, and it's this board that should be the lead agency, not the town, which, by the way, is the applicant itself. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on, but.
Good point. So, question I have. So in this letter, it says indicating it's our intent. If we agree that we intend to take over lead agent, what are the chances that we actually get to do that?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you the answer. That's why I want to hire a lawyer.
Got it.
Okay? I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
The question I'm always asked is, are we going to win?
But may I ask, can you expound on that? Why, I'm not sure why that's an important question for you.
The question is, are we going to go through this whole process? We justify or agree to our intention to do this. We put in this effort, and it's going to be all for naught.
Well,
I mean, how much time are we going to waste?
The way I look at it, I personally, as I've said, I think we have good reason to
Agree
declare-
100%.
Okay. And I think the way Sam has outlined the process is if there's a dispute between us and the town board as to who should have lead agency, it goes in front of the DEC. We make our argument, the town board makes their argument, they decide who has the better argument. I think we have a good argument. I think we're going to win. Now, whether or not that happens or not, I can't be worried about, how long it takes or a waste of time. Okay.
On our way there, okay, we'll meet with council, and maybe we meet in executive session, maybe not.
Yep.
But on our way to making that decision, we may conclude, based on what council tells us, that we're doomed and we're going to lose. You weren't here, but we had any number of cell phone tower disputes, and we've settled a number of litigations, and we settled them, and the towers got built because our expert counsel in telecommunication, whatever the heck it's called, cell phone law, if you will, said to us, you're going to lose if you fight this. And, and we voted, usually by a 6-1 vote, you can go look it up, to settle these cases. And, look, I'm not here to fight a fight that we're going to lose. I'm not here to cost the town money for an attorney that's a doomed affair. I don't want that. What I want is I want to make an informed decision based on a lawyer's recommendation. And if we're going to go and make that, the only way we get there, based on what I was told with the town attorney, because they perceive a conflict, is to vote that we object and want to be lead agency, and then we go forward. And who knows, we'll have 30 days to object. So, who knows whether or not we ultimately do. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to propose that if we do go forward, we don't have another meeting set till the 28th. I'd like to set a meeting for the 21st, so and put this on the agenda. If you're not here, well, maybe we can tinker with the date a little bit. I'll do emails. But I would like to get at least one meeting among the entire board with council, take council advice about whether it should be an executive session or not. I don't know the answer to that question either, but I would like to give us a chance to sit and flesh it out. Now, there's arguments to be made for doing it in public. There's probably very valid reasons to do it in exec. I'm not going to get there now. But so that's my thinking. So
can those of us on Zoom state our position?
Yeah, I just want to, I interrupted Bruce's speaking, and I don't know where Bruce is right now. And if you want, I can go back to Ed and to Jen.
Let's forge ahead.
In other words, yes. On the second question.
Yep.
Ed, Jen, I went to you first. Jen, and then I'll close it out.
I have been doing a lot of kind of behind the scenes research, even before the letter this week. I kind of went back and, read minutes and listened to some of the town board meetings with regard to this issue. And I have to say, I agree with Michael. I think that the town has really has spent, 10 years developing this project, doing their due diligence. And I think the time, I don't think we should be lead agency. I think the town should be lead agency.
Okay. Ed.
All right, so my feeling about this is I totally understand why the town board wants to be lead agency on this. We all know they have spent years on this, and I think they have really dotted a lot of I's and crossed a lot of T's. There's been a lot of public input. I totally get that. I do think that there's a lot that we can add, right? As a planning board, and I'm not sure that the process with them as lead agency would allow us to have the kind of impact on this process that we could have, right? But on the other hand, I don't want us to do this in a way that will drag out this process. I mean, we all want to get this thing done. flipping back again, I do think that this is in my way of thinking, this is a very large, expensive, and somewhat controversial project, right? And it doesn't seem to me, my gut says this is not the project the town board should be trying to invoke this Monroe analysis around to claim lead agency. It just feels to
That's
me.
a separate, no, Ed, Monroe is separate from the question of lead agency. Let's make sure we're clear on that.
Okay.
This is a question of.
All right, well, forget the Monroe analysis piece of it. I think it probably is not one in which the town should really kind of create some conflict about who should be the lead agency on. It feels to me like just because of the scale of the project, it's one that should really come to us. However, I think if this is going to be, I really do think if it's going to be a protracted exercise and drag the project out and cause a lot of conflict and grief, it's probably not something we should pursue. But the only way to find that out, I think, is to get counsel and have an executive session and discuss it and then make a decision.
Okay.
So I think Ed asked a very good question, posed a good question, like, if the town has lead agency, will the planning board be able to write letters, influence?
Well, according to, again, the secret cookbook, the town, in the determination of significance, the lead agency must consider involved agency input where applicable. We would be that. The question is, what does that mean? And the question is, how effective is it? And really, the question is, what does it mean? What does it mean to, what's the word? Consider.
Consider.
What does the word consider mean? And, that's a question. So, Ed, in terms of the second question, your answer is yes, I presume?
How is that second question?
The second question being, now that we have the EAF and now that we have the February 5th letter, let me find the February 5th letter, sorry. Sorry. I want to read the language. Did I put it over here? Thank you. No, that's not it. Damn it. Well, hold on just give me a second here. I'll find it amongst my, here it is, I got it. Do we, objection from your agency indicating its intent to declare itself lead agency?
Oh, that's the second question?
Yeah. If we answer yes, then we're going to talk about hiring an attorney.
Yeah, well, I don't know, I can't answer that question until I think we should hire the attorney and consider whether we want to do it or not.
Okay. Well, I suppose we don't have to answer the question tonight because we have 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hire an attorney, folks, and then answer. You see, I've been under the belief that we needed to respond to the question, that we should do that. But I guess the answer is it really only matters if we're going to say no. If there's a majority sentiment to say no, then that ends the conversation. If there isn't a majority sentiment to say no to the second question, if there's either a yes, which Lou and I believe yes, then Bruce now also, I apologize, also think yes. Well, okay, then we definitely need to hire a counsel. But I guess the answer is that if a majority of this board does not want to answer no to the question, do we want to be lead agency? If, for example, they think they need more time to talk to an attorney, well, then we don't have to answer the question, and we just hire an attorney. And by 30 days after February 5th, we give our yes or no.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I thought, Ed, this is sort of addressed to you. If we answer yes, the reason we're getting an attorney is not to make a determination as to whether we should answer yes or no. The reason we're getting an attorney, if we answer yes, is because then we've decided that we are going to be in a fight with the town board. And we need an attorney to conduct that fight or to advise us as to go about it.
I don't see it exactly that way, Lou.
It's not necessary. I don't know that that's necessary. As we're talking, look, this is, well, welcome to the world of how legal decisions are made. Because this is, no, seriously, this is, the way things go. You come in, you think this is the question, yes, no. And as you go through it and other very intelligent people look at the issue and ferret through it, you say to yourself, well, maybe we don't have to answer the question right now. And maybe there's a bigger question that we need to answer first. And that bigger question is, do we need a lawyer? Now, I can tell you the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is hell yes, we need a lawyer. And then we can answer the question that doesn't require an answer for 30 days.
Right.
So we should have an executive session.
Well, I'm not saying it's an executive session. The question is this: do we want to hire a lawyer? That's really the question. And that attorney will give us advice about whether it's executive session or not.
So
because there's rules about executive session.
the only way that you would make the decision of not wanting to hire an attorney is if you have a definite no.
Correct.
To that question.
That is correct.
If you're definite on a no.
Right. That's correct. That's correct. If the board doesn't want to be lead agency, then we don't need a lawyer, and we can all go home. And the town will be lead agency. At least they won't have our objection.
How many of us need to vote for that? Like, do we need 4?
A majority, 4. We don't have 7 tonight, so we'd need 4 people to agree to hire an attorney. Now,
got my vote.
That's a yes. All right, let me do this. Let me say this, okay? I interviewed 3 attorneys. 2 of them were conflicted or felt that they were conflicted and couldn't do it. I've located a lawyer named Scott Middleton. He's with a firm called Campola, Middleton, and McCormick. I've spoken to him. He is the village attorney for North Haven. He is a former mayor of, I hope I got the town right, Rocky Point, I think, which is up in Suffolk. His firm is in Manhattan, they wouldn't be sizable, but for Suffolk County, they're big. They have offices in, I think, Jericho and definitely in Riverhead. I've spoken to him a couple of times. They're not conflicted. They have the staffing and the ability to deal with this. And what they would have to do is give a proposal. They have to tell the town has to vote to approve it. We'll get that application on. It's a contract, so the town has to approve it.
Okay.
The town will approve it, and then we can go forward. And I believe that the town will act quickly on that vote.
Yeah, so we can get that done within.
Yeah. Well, what happens is if we vote that we would like to retain counsel, yes, tonight, I'll send him an email.
So the town has to approve us hiring a lawyer.
No, they don't have to. They have to budget it. That's the
the lawyer that we're going to use to fight them.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, just so in the world of matrimonial, for example, the husband, it used to be the husband, one spouse, the one with the money, usually pays for the attorney usually it was the wife who doesn't have the money.
You did not do my divorce.
I'm sorry?
I said you didn't do my divorce.
I haven't done a matrimonial in about 30 years. But the way it works is the attorney, in the way it's supposed to work, Jen.
Yeah.
The attorney, the spouse with the money pays for the lawyer of the spouse without the money, and that means that every month or every quarter when he writes a check, he has another reason to, be angry. So, and the point is that the wife, and again, I'm speaking broadly, the wife's interests is what that lawyer serves, regardless of who's paying his bills. Okay, so that's to answer that very valid question. Okay, all right, so I'm going to put it up to this way. Does the board wish to hire counsel?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No,
Yes, no.
no.
Jen, no. Okay. So and I vote yes. By a vote of 4-2 with one absent, the board votes to hire counsel, and I will make the necessary arrangements with Mr. Middleton. Okay?
Okay, so for the record, based on tonight's ruling, I'm going to recuse myself, even though.
Oh, yeah,
it's
no,
been
no,
understood-
I'm
it's been
sorry, Nancy. I should have
understood.
given you a chance to do that right at the outset.
I was just advised to see how you guys rule tonight before making an official
Yeah,
announcement.
that's it. So now it's official?
Yeah.
All right. All right, folks. So we're not going to, we have voted not to rescind the old letter. We have not voted on the new letter.
Right.
We're holding that in abeyance.
Right.
Okay. And that we're holding in abeyance also by a vote of 4-2 with one abstention. Do I have you right on that one? Okay. Jody, you got that? Okay. All right. So it's a lot of hard work. I really appreciate what everyone's done. And, this is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to dig into all this and to deal with these issues, but I know we have, and I know, the one thing I know is all of our hearts are in the right place on this. So I thank you all.
Thank you, Sam, for your thoroughness.
Thank you,
Somebody make a
Sam.
motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
All those
adjourn.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you, folks.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Ed.
everybody.
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate it. Thank you, LTV.
I love lawyers.
Thank you, you're welcome.
So many friends were lawyers.
I'll tell you, my friend, this was law. I have done
This was law?
this, what we just did, this is, welcome to my world, okay? Seriously.
Sausage.
This is what yeah, right. This is what I do, just like
Get
this,
going.
all the fucking time.
Oh, I like it. Oh, should stand up.